now these centering words. We hunger for the holy, longing for the living God. We gather as children of God, rejoicing in the promise. Welcome to everyone here in the sanctuary and those visiting with us online. If this is your first Sunday here in the sanctuary, we invite you to stop at our welcome desk after the service and get a small gift that we have for you. We ask that everyone please pass the red attendance book on the end of each pew and register your attendance with us. Our pastor's last Sunday was last week, and this Sunday members of the congregation are hosting the service. So y'all pray for us. Next week, we will welcome Reverend Allie Deal to bring our message. Reverend Deal is a retired clergy from South Carolina Annual Conference, and she worships at First United Methodist Church in Hendersonville. The following Sunday, on July 3rd, we'll welcome Reverend Shawnee Streeter. Reverend Streeter is an ordained deacon and serves as the Blue Ridge District Vitality Specialist. And Pastor Andrew, our new pastor's first day in the office will be Tuesday, July 5th, and his first Sunday will be July 10th. So we're looking forward to his coming. Are there any announcements that others need to make? Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, today is our 3rd mile offering Sunday, and the basket is there if you want to make a gift. It's for the Sharing House, which is one of our local frontline organizations, and helping the needy, so appreciate your support for that.
Paula has an announcement. I'll come up front. You want to come up here? Yes.
No, not up here.
You need a mic.
Good morning, all. I come to you on behalf of the Staff Parish Committee with some news and some information. First of all, I have now met 3/4 of our new pastor's family, the Crimmins. Harold and I were lucky enough to meet them over at the parsonage. You are going to love Rebecca. She is very, very nice, a lovely woman. And wait till you see little Oscar, 1.5, and he says hello and goodbye by blowing kisses. So there we go with that. I hope he'll come in here and scatter around here one Sunday. Wouldn't kill us at all. The nursery is being updated. The carpet is being replaced and with vinyl flooring, and we have new blinds in there. Carson and Ellen, thank you so much for your help in the Board of Trustees in getting all this done. So we are getting ready for our new family, and that is the 3rd thing I want to talk to you about today. This is from my heart today, in that I have to tell you all I have tried, but I have not accomplished what I have tried. And that has been to get a worker in our nursery. I've been on all kinds of social media, tea times. I've worked with Carson at Blue Ridge Community College, Charles Wallace at Brevard College, and I have only had one small nibble, and they left me after one day. I don't know, they must have rethought the position of the nursery helper. So I don't have anyone to lean on at this point at all. And instead of trying to solve the problem, because I wasn't able to do it, it's time that I ask for your help. Our advertising will be continued, and I want to have in place for July 10th, which is our minister's first day. I want to have that nursery all ready to go, so that if Rebecca wants to bring her children in, I imagine she will, she's going to want to be with her husband on his first Sunday right here in church. You will see that between them, that I think that's exactly where she'll want to be. Instead of asking for one nursery worker, now we're going to have 2 nursery workers each week. I know that's going to be hard for our congregation, but I want us to meet this goal, and the only way I could do it is to come straight to you all, because I had not helped the situation at all. So I really want you to consider this, and the women of our church, you know, over the years, they have been saints to do this. But the reality is that now we need the men of the church to come and join in on Sundays. So hopefully we've got fathers and sons and uncles and stepfathers who would enjoy being in there with our 2 new children. I have put a sign-up sheet outside the nursery door with the dates. We're going through September on this first go-around. Husbands and wives cannot serve at the same time. That's Methodist rules and regulations. And, one more thing. I was talking to Rebecca, and I said, well, what do you like to do? And she said, well, I like to sing. And I said, you want to sing in the choir? And she said, yeah, I'd like to do that. So that's another reason we need nursery workers, so she can come in here and be with us. I thank you for this extra time. I appreciate it. And I will promise I'll keep working but we are going to go with this plan for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Any other announcements?
Yes.
Oh, Francis. Use that microphone.
The visitation for the family of Linda Nelson is this afternoon. The family, they will accept people anytime during the day, love to have you, but the regular time is set at from 2 to 5 this afternoon, and they would love to have you visit with them. If you don't know where they live, they are off of Elementary Road, right back of the Brevard Elementary School. And they're on Bluebird Lane, and they're fairly easy to find, and they would love to have anybody come and visit.
Larry?
Tuesday morning, we have a chance to go glean strawberries in Mills River. I don't know all the details yet. I'm supposed to receive those Monday. But if you can come, they're planning on starting at 8 a.m., so we would leave the church here at 7:30 a.m. on Tuesday.
Any others? If not, we'll have the intro now. Please stand and join me in the call to worship. Holy One, as we gather this morning to worship you, may we speak truth, so that our words may give grace to those who hear. May we pray in faith, so that our words may give grace to those who hear. May we sing with joy, so that our words may give grace to those who hear. May we listen with open minds and receptive hearts, so that your words may give grace to us who hear. Amen. Let us pray. Come, O God, be with us here. As much as the deer longs for streams of cool water, we long to know that you are with us. When trouble and sorrow come, we need you. Help us remember that you are always with us and that your love is steadfast. Put your song into our hearts that we may praise you this day. Amen. Join us now in the opening hymn, which is Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, and that's on page 64 in your large hymnal.
Holy, today we're here to share our prayers and our concerns and our joys. The joy today is the gift of this service. Anyone have a joy or a concern or would like to ask for prayers? Mimi?
I just want to say thank you to all the fathers here, and hope they have a great day, and all the men that are not fathers, I'm sure that they've touched many children in their lives.
This is for all the fathers, whether they're our biological father or others. Anyone else? Jeff?
So a joy, we just returned from Michigan visiting our son and daughter-in-law, and while we were there, they purchased their first home together. So we were excited to be a part of that and to see our son go through all the anxiety of this real estate market, as you know, is crazy, and to watch our son do what we did 30-some years ago was enjoyable. No. Thank you.
Congratulations. Anyone? Larry?
Our son has a very close friend who was just diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. He's looking at several weeks of radiation and followed by 4 months, I believe, of chemo. So if we could add Chris Holt, H-O-L-T, to our prayer list, please. And a lot of you realize that May's cancer has come back, so she will begin more intensive treatments next month. A couple of diagnostic things that will be taken care of during the remainder of this month, but please keep May in your prayers as well.
Anyone else? Betty?
I have a joy, and it's a great joy that I just had to share with you. I have all 4 of my children going to descend upon my house tomorrow, and the reason that's such a great joy is my daughter lives in Argentina, and we haven't seen her in over 4 years, and that's one miracle, and then getting 4 kids together in one house is the second miracle, so that's it.
Congratulations to you. Anyone else? Wait just a minute.
I want to ask for prayers for Mary Laura. She's 15 years old, and she called me this morning on her way to Berry College to the governor's program, and she will be there a month, and she will be studying dance. So that's a long time for somebody to be away from home, but she's excited.
It's good to see Chris and Blaine here today. Jerry Euler's daughter and son-in-law. Anyone else? All right, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Almighty God, these words are in remembrance of his Vineyard. We give thanks for the gift of his life and his being a Christian father to all of us. We give thanks for your magnificent presence among us and the gift of your Son, Jesus Christ. We give thanks for our fathers on this Father's Day and for all those mentoring and being a father to so many. We pray for the family of Linda Nelson as they mourn, as they remember her life. For Bill and Frances Sinyard, for Tony, who has severe back pain and is trying to move and get ready to walk into his new church. For Carla Atkinson, she will go through 3 weeks of chemo and then probably have her bladder removed. For May Clayton and Larry, as she will begin treatment again for cancer. For Mary Laura, granddaughter of Wendell and Mimi. For Chris Holt. For Roger and Christy Stansel, as Christy is the caregiver now for Roger, and she has to work. And for all those in this church suffering from disease, medical problems, loneliness, or isolation, or who cannot come for whatever reason. We lift up today Nathan, son of Frank and Laura. We pray that he will continue to get better. We give thanks for the gift of Tony's service here to us, and we pray for our new minister, Andrew, and his family. All these things we do in Jesus' name. Amen. It's time to share the peace of Christ with everyone here in this church. May the peace of Christ be with you.
And also with you. As individuals and as the church, one of the ways we shine in the world is by giving to others through our own skills and talents, as well as through our gifts of money. In so doing, we participate in the great plan of God to transform our world. So let us give with joy as we are able. Ushers, would the ushers please come forward?
us pray. God of all abundance and mercy, with gladsome hearts, we thank you for the gifts you've showered upon us. We humbly ask for the presence of your Spirit to guide us as we seek to use these gifts to the glory of your kingdom. This we pray in your Son's holy name. Amen.
I wanted to make a statement about our anthem today. Those of you who recognize, you don't recognize the name of it, but we're singing God of Our Fathers. This is a national hymn, and of course it has to do with the God we serve, who was also the God of our founding fathers in our country, and who still remains the God of our fathers today. The words are very applicable, and I want you to listen carefully as we sing.
We're going to have some family and faith statements, and I'd like to introduce Pam Mall, who's going to speak on behalf of my
Mike is unable to be with us today. He's at a special Father's Day service that's being led by his son. I shall now read what Mike has written. To start, let me state that I am an exceptionally blessed and privileged child of God's, and I have always loved my dad very much. Words cannot adequately convey how important my father was to me, but I will try. Many people only make Father's Day about their earthly biological dad, but I want to give a wider credit to include my grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and my Heavenly Father too. Plus, I've had one wonderful uncle and several terrific mentors who treated me much like a son, which is why I say I've been exceptionally blessed. After World War II, My single biggest blessing was the privilege of being born in the United States to two wonderful, God-fearing parents. Thank you very much, God, since you alone deserve that credit. My dad was born in 1920, so he and my mom lived their childhood through the Great Depression that followed the 1929 stock market collapse, along with my grandparents, who also lived through World War I. Dad never talked about the Depression, nor did any of my grandparents that I can remember, although they all lived through those incredibly difficult times, likely making them tougher, more resourceful individuals because of having to survive that tragic, challenging experience. At my maternal grandfather's funeral service, I learned from some of his surviving friends how Grandpa leveraged his position at the town bank as the town banker during the Depression, helping them to survive with his ability to delay and defer some of their financial obligations. He knew them personally and had faith that things would be better and they would eventually be good for their debts, which they were, but he went way out on a limb for them, as a good father would do for his children. My father was the first in his family to attend college, interrupting it to serve in World War II, spending 4.5 long years non-stop in the Pacific Theater. He played a critical leadership role in the Philippines island-to-island campaign of capturing them back from the Japanese. So he was very close up to the action through all those battles, but I never discussed any of this until his later years. I'm certain that those 4.5 years of nonstop traumas and bloodshed left a permanent and deep impression on my dad's personality. Dad returned from the war, got married to his college sweetheart, resumed his college education thanks to the GI Bill, and started his family. I was first born in 1946, among the first of the baby boomer generation, living with both of my biological parents. I was followed the next year by twin sisters. I was further blessed having all 4 of my biological grandparents alive and active during most of my youth. They were religious, working at good middle-income careers, and considered successful by their own yardsticks. I was also fortunate to know and interact with 3 of my great-grandparents. My paternal grandmother's dad, who immigrated from England, my maternal grandfather's dad, and my maternal grandmother's mom, all 3 of them were independent, active, and living comfortable, quality lives in their later years. Dad began his career after college as a teacher, a profession many on both sides of my family have pursued. He achieved leadership positions in the New York State Teachers Association. We attended the Methodist Church every Sunday as a family. He also found time to volunteer and create a remarkable Soldiers Museum at the Bath, New York VA Center, and after retirement served as the town historian. Dad led by his example of always attempting to be of service to others. My dad was always a good provider. Because of lower teacher pay, he frequently had summer jobs to help provide for us, and after we were all in school, my mom also became a teacher. We didn't have a lot, but we always had what we needed. Dad helped and encouraged me with my gardening and poultry projects, plus 4-H and Boy Scouts. My dad and I didn't have an extra special closeness, probably my fault because I was so strong-willed, but he was always available to talk and always providing guidance, trying to help me stay between the lines in life, which I was inclined to venture across. Yet he did allow me significant independence in my life. He did the best he could with the challenging hand of cards he was dealt. My card was probably his most challenging. I bet that he would have agreed. Because of the significant role models of my dad, my mom, grandparents, I felt the obligation to attempt to do the right thing and make them proud of me. I believe I also made decisions and choices during my life, knowing that God, my Heavenly Father, was also looking down on me, always watching. Lots of pressure that I wasn't always able to successfully meet. I was made aware early that being of service to others should serve as a guidance to my life's path, and that my bad decisions would adversely reflect on all of them. So they all seemed to be constantly lurking over my mind when I arrived at forks in the roads. There was a litany of phrases that my parents and grandparents were always reciting to me. God helps those who help themselves. If you love life, then do not squander time, for that is the stuff life is made of. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. I have learned that many of those sayings I have now repeated to my own children and grandchildren were actually from Benjamin Franklin's booklet, The Way to Wealth. I moved to North Carolina in 1980 after completing my medical training to begin my practice. He was a doctor. And in 1996, I was very blessed to have my parents finally agree to move to North Carolina to live with us on our farm for their final 14 years, allowing them to spend more time with their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. It also gave me the opportunity to partially pay them back for the many things they had done for me. It also allowed them to finish out their final lives at home with a supportive family, plus the wonderful hospice team we had available for assistance. My personal prayer is that I might be as lucky at the end of my life. Unfortunately, in his 80s, dementia slowly took over Dad's life, and so I really lost my dad several years before his death. But I was very blessed to have had him as my earthly father for 89 years. I can fully understand why most people are far more frightened of dementia than they are of cancer. I love my dad dearly, and I miss him greatly. I hope I was able to make my dad as proud of me as I was of him. Thank you for letting me share this story with you, Mike.
I think most of you know me, but for those who don't, I'm Marge Woodruff. I grew up on a farm in northern Illinois, one of 6 children, and I adored my dad. I tagged along with him every chance I had. When I was almost 14 years old, Dad taught me to drive. We had this old pickup truck. It had a clutch and a shifter on the floor, and we had cattle that were in a pasture a good distance from the house, and he would drive out to that pasture, and then he'd get in the back end of the truck and tell me to drive up to the next feed bunk, and he would shovel the feed under the feed bunk. And you can imagine it was a jerky, jumpy ride from one feed bump to the other. But he never complained or yelled at me about the way I drove that old truck. And then that same summer, my dad was killed in a farm accident. It was in July. And that's a really busy, important time on a farm. But we had friends and neighbors who came in with their tractors and all kinds of equipment that summer and made sure that we got all the crops in. And one day, when there was a large group of men there working, one of the men said to me that your dad was the kind of guy who would give the shirt off of his back. He said, this is the least that we can do for him. I'd also like to tell you a story about my grandma. Grandpa and Grandma had a real large garden, and Grandma used to sell vegetables off of her back porch. And Grandpa and Grandma also had a big family. And on Sundays after church, any of the family was welcome to go to Grandma's for dinner. And I'm sure she never knew how many were going to show up, but it was like magic. There was always enough food there for everyone. But I think she held back vegetables on Saturday to make sure she had enough, because my friend Emily told me that one Saturday she went to Grandma's house to buy green beans. And Grandma said, don't have any green beans. And Emily said, okay. How's Marge? Have you seen her lately? And Grandma looked at her and said, you're Marge's friend Emily, aren't you? Well, I've got some green beans. Not only did she have green beans, she would not let Emily pay for them. And I've also learned that we can even learn from our children. My daughter Mindy lives in Colorado, and she makes beautiful quilts. She called me just recently and told me that she had been out walking their dog. She had the dog on a leash, and while she was walking the dog, this other dog came charging out of the yard and attacked her dog, had the dog down on the ground, and the man came out of the house and had to pull his dog off of her dog. Well, Mindy said she called the man a couple times because she wanted to make sure that the dog was up to date on its shots and so on. And she said the second time she called him, he yelled at her and said, what do you want out of me anyway? Mindy said, so I took him a quilt. I said, you what? She said, Mom, I heard that he was home because he had just had surgery. He was recovering from surgery, and I thought he needed something to cheer him up. So I think the lesson I learned from my parents, my grandparents, and even my children is just be kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Marge. That was wonderful. Well, I'm back now as Pam Mall, not as Mike. And I want to share with you my childhood, just a little bit. I'm not going to go very far. To give you an example of how my parents influenced my faith. I was blessed to be born to parents who believed and loved and served and worshiped God. I am blessed that both of my parents came from a family tradition of faithful Christians. My faith history goes back as far as my great-great-grandparents. That's as far as I'm able to trace. I am blessed to have a legacy of not one denomination, but 3. Daddy's family worshiped in the Baptist church. Mother's family was Methodist. I grew up in the Presbyterian church. Why, you ask? Well, when Mama and Daddy were married, they moved to Chamblee, Georgia, and Daddy attended Southern Tech. Mother worked, so income was very low. So they decided to save money on gas. They would walk to the nearest church. It was a Presbyterian church. And that's where they stuck with. Honestly, I have no memory of how I learned the Lord's Prayer, the Apostle Creed, the doxology. Those are words I just seem to know. I have no recollection of being introduced to the Bible or God or Jesus. I was just so immersed in Christianity that I believed without a question. I'm going to share with you just a few examples about my childhood to help you understand what I mean. Prayer was a key part of our faith. We held hands around the meal table as blessings were said. My dad he usually led that prayer until my brother and I were given that honor to participate. Mama always led our bedtime prayers. One time, I was around age 6 or 7. I had slept all day because I was recovering from a virus. When bedtime rolled around, of course I was wide awake. So I decided to go climb in bed with my parents, who were just settling in for the evening, and I expected to be entertained. I was awake. Well, I was fascinated to discover that my parents also had bedtime prayers. Mother read a devotional, Daddy read the scripture, and then prayers followed. And I have followed that example for the rest of hopefully the rest of my life. Attending church was a key part of our faith. It seems like we were always heading for that place, as I still do today. We were involved in every church activity that you could find in a traditional church setting. During my childhood, I lived in 3 different major cities, all in eastern North Carolina. And each time Dad had a job promotion, we'd move. And on the first Sunday in the new town, we would go church shopping. You see, there were certain criteria to be met for that church to become our new church home. Of course, there had to be children's programs. Dad really enjoyed a minister who had a strong faith and inspiring sermons. And on top of Mother's list was an adult choir. When I moved to Brevard, I too went church shopping, and I truly believe that God led me here to St. Timothy. Nurturing others was a key part of our faith. My mother majored in religious education, and before she met Dad, she was a Christian education director at a Methodist church. After my parents were married, she was always involved in children's ministry. And as I mentioned, she sang in the church choir. She was often requested to sing solos at weddings and other special occasions. And many were blessed by God by my mother's beautiful soprano voice. And no, I don't have her voice. My father's mission to nurture others used his gifts of organization and the ability to focus on details. Daddy was asked to coordinate establishing a Stephen ministry at the final church we joined in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Stephen ministers are lay congregational members trained to provide care to those in crisis. He and Mother visited the homebound, the sick, and the grieving each week. It was this ministry to the homebound that got Dad to thinking, these people who couldn't get out really needed a way to worship with their other church members. So he researched, and with his guidance, Sunday morning services were being recorded. And he arranged with a local TV station to broadcast these Sunday services. So a form of what we now have today with our streaming. Later, after retirement, he saw a need for and collaborated with other Presbyterian churches in Fayetteville to work together to create a Habitat for Humanity team. And during this project, he met a man who was connected to the Haiti mission. And so Daddy was able to go on 2 mission trips to Haiti. He stayed in contact with the Haitian minister that he met there by email and was able to arrange financing support. These are just a few of the ways of how my parents showed me by example the importance of following God's path. Their love for God bloomed in me. There is a Bible verse from 1 John in chapter 2 that I think explains why my faith journey is and continues to be. Hear these words from 1 John. As for you, see that what you have heard from the beginning remains in you. If it does, you also will remain in the Son and in the Father. And this is what he promised us, eternal life. Praise be to God.
My father was a veteran of World War I and served in France. In 1922, he bought a little 42-acre farm over in Jackson County, the adjoining county, and that became the homestead for his family, where he and my mother had 12 kids, I being the 8th one. Cheaper by the dozen, I guess. We still own a little bit of that farm place, and including the old homestead, and have a family reunion there each August for their 100+ descendants and spouses. Each of my parents passed away at the age of 90 after long and good lives. I think their life could be summed up as Paul did in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7. I have fought a good fight, I've finished the course, and I've kept the faith. And that would sum up their lives. From the standpoint of material things, I was born with nothing and have managed to keep most of that. But looking back, I realize I was born rich in the things that really matter in life. My parents were good, hard-working people who deeply loved and cared for their large family and loved God. I never recall being hungry or without adequate clothes or without a good shelter over my head. Our hard work on the farm yielded a bounty of wholesome meat, vegetables, and fruit, and, much of which was preserved for the winter, so we always had plenty of food. My parents were firm believers in Proverbs 22:6, which states, "Train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it." They taught us many valuable lessons in life, especially by their own example. These included the following, and I've heard these words many times. Always be honest and trustworthy, and make your word your honor.
Be responsible and carry your own load. Be a good neighbor. Be a good citizen and do your civic duties. Get a good education, which neither of them have been privileged to do. And most importantly, have a strong faith in God. And the one I like best, Sunday was a day for church, relaxation, and fun, and a big special dinner at noontime after church. Our family attended a Wesleyan church. It was then called the Wesleyan Methodist Church in our community, about 3/4 of a mile from our house. One thing I remember about that church was it was teeming with children, all the way from infants to teenagers. And of course, the Hooper family was a large part of that group of kids. It was a fun place to go and meet friends. We walked to church as we did not have a vehicle, and it would have taken a bus to haul us all anyway. Some, if not all of my family, were always present anytime the church door was open, including Sunday morning, Sunday night, and midweek prayer service. Our church had a large bell, which could be heard throughout the community. This bell rang 30 minutes before a service would start, and then again just before the service started. We were always in church when the church bell rang the second time. To show how dedicated we were to being in church when the bell rang, I'll relate to you the following incident. The church bell rang on one occasion which is really seared into my memory. When I was about 6 years old and home with my other younger siblings while my parents and older siblings were working somewhere on the farm, the church bell began ringing on a weekday and rang longer than usual. We children who were at home knew the bell ringing was unusual, but we also knew that our habit was to be in church when the church bell rang. So we began to get ready to go to church. And just as we were leaving to go to church, one of my older brothers showed up and told us there was no church service. It was another reason why the church bell was ringing. That day happened to be August 15, 1945. Does anybody remember what that day is? Yep. That was the day that the Japanese surrendered. Actually, I think the official surrender is September 2nd, but the emperor announced the surrender on August 15th. Some of my siblings and I still remember that occasion and have a chuckle about it. But I accepted Christ as my Savior at a revival meeting at our church when I was about 12 years old. And since that time, my faith has been an important element in my life. I have stumbled many times, but the love and grace of God still lead me. A strong faith in God has been a key ingredient of Ellen's and my marriage of 59 years, and we tried to instill in our children the same rules that I learned from my parents, and which have served me well over a relatively long lifetime.
I have a quiet story about a family member who helped influence my faith. It's not loud and it's not a razzle-dazzle story by any means, but throughout my life, this person has been an important influence to me. My maternal grandmother, her name was Annie Abernathy, would come to spend the winters with my family in Kingsport, Tennessee, to get away from her lonely and drafty and cold house outside of Charlotte. We had a modest house. We had 2 bedrooms, so she slept in one of the twin beds in my bedroom as my sister was away for college. The first several nights, we go to bed about the same time, and as I calmed down from my teenage frenzy, I would hear Granny whispering. I thought she was just thinking about her life, trying to make sense maybe of her new widowhood, and she was away from her surroundings. Time progressed, and for this teenager it took a while. And one night I finally realized that my grandmother, each and every night before she went to sleep, she would say her prayers. That was the buzzing conversation that was her talking with God, quiet and sweet. As I listened, I myself became very calm, and my prayers would begin. My sweet grandmother made an impression on me at age 16. She had prayers for her family, for her friends, and maybe even our country, which during the 60s was certainly in turmoil and change. I never mentioned this to her. I never even mentioned it. Isn't it funny how this brings your emotions out? I noticed in others, and that's good. That's okay. I never mentioned this to her, nor anyone in my family. It was a tender moment between an aging grandmother and a young teen who was trying to figure out her world, and to know that prayer is steadfast, humble, and quiet. To this day, when I say my prayers, I don't like to share them with many people. I'm very quiet, just like my grandmother was, and my prayers are mostly between me and God, and I like it that way. Thank you all. And thank you for everyone. It's so nice to hear about our families and what they have done for us and with us. Our last hymn is page 710, Faith of Our Fathers, for Father's Day.
Paula said, thank you to everyone who shared with us today. I feel like they gave us a little gift, a little piece of themselves. And I know it made me, and I'm sure it made all of you, think of things in your past, people that influenced you, and how you were raised and how you were brought into the Christian faith. And I really appreciate their effort that these folks put into coming and talking with us. Let's bow for the closing prayer. Blessed God, our Heavenly Father, Thank you so much for loving us and blessing us with the lives that you did. Today, we especially are grateful to you for giving us earthly fathers and other Christians in our lives to teach and guide us, to provide for us, to be there to smooth out the road ahead for us, to love us and teach us how to love, and to be good parents and good citizens in return. We are so grateful for their guidance that positioned us to lead happy and productive lives. Go with us today as we celebrate these earthly fathers, as we show them how much we love and appreciate them. Thank you, O God, for blessings you pour out on us daily and for being with us through whatever life brings. We know we are never alone because you are there with us. In your Son's precious name, amen. Hear now this benediction. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Go in peace.